everybody, and welcome to the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. Where come rain, shine, or anything in between, we're here to deliver to you the Kansas State sporting news you so love. I'm Ace Edwards, right alongside
Connor Baltazar.
And welcome to us getting our joy back with the Cincinnati victory. In fact, quite the dominant victory for K-State, won 41-15, and you could make a pretty convincing argument that 12 of those points came in garbage time for Cincinnati. So you could say realistically it was 41-6 or 27 to, I can't do math right now. Anyway, it was a dominant K-State victory in what was, I don't want to call it the most necessary game because, this wasn't a gotta have it game, to control your own destiny for conference championship. But I don't think that the vibes of the fan base could have survived losing to Scott Satterfield.
No, I'm in agreement there. Because even though we won, honestly, and also the stadium did fill in better than I expected it to. I was fully expecting the sellout streak to die, and I was fully expecting just not a lot of people to show up. But it ended up being a better crowd than I thought we would have. But despite that, pretty much the entire game, the energy was very clearly lower than what it normally would be, because people are still, I think, really frustrated with the last month of football.
Yeah, and I saw some people, granted, the majority of the people saying this are impossible to please anyway. They were saying, well, this is super nice. I'm really glad that we did this now and we don't have any conference championship. It's like, first off, yeah, you can be frustrated with how the season has gone without being a baby about it, basically. It's like, well, why didn't we bring this earlier? Because those were different games against different teams. I don't know what else to really say there. They can't pick to suddenly have good games. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah, if it were that easy, we would run the touchdown play every play. So
yeah, and that only happens in freshman difficulty college football. But I do agree with you what you said about the energy. It was noticeably lower, but it wasn't abysmal.
Bad.
No.
Yeah. When I say it was lower, I think we're on the same page there. It wasn't bad, but it was clear that people were a bit anxious, I think. And people were definitely a little weary. And when I make those observations, that's not finger pointing or trying to say that that's not valid, because I get it. I was even there for the first, I think the first defensive series. I was honestly a little apprehensive to get going because I was still a little nervous, but I pretty quickly got back into regular form, and things turned out okay. Obviously, it's great when you go into halftime up 27-3, so that helped a lot. But I guess the flip side of that, though, is that a lot of people did not come back for the second half.
But it was the good type of not coming back.
It's the type that we complain about when we are in the conference title hunt, and we have been playing really good football, and we get on people for that. But it's when things have been going as badly as they have been the last couple of weeks. It's the sort of thing that you're actually a little happy to see.
Yeah. And speaking of things that we're happy to see, we'll talk a little bit about this whenever we get to game day grades, but Connor Riley made the change of calling plays from the box to calling plays on the sideline. And yes, he was the one still calling the plays. This could be the subject of a rant, but what I will simply say is we don't know enough about the Pack to even know if he was contributing, though he probably was still in the box and still is one of the best minds on the staff. And there were not enough screenplays for Matt Wells to be calling the offense. So it was still very much a Riley offense that was willing to make a bit more of an adjustment to outside runs such as pistol wide zone, my beloved. But it was Connor Riley calling the plays, and he was down on the sidelines. And he had a pretty solid, well, he had a good, I'm not even going to call it solid. I'm going to give him his flowers after basically Shaquille O'Neal dunking on him for the past month. Because, and I'm not saying that he didn't deserve it then. He deserved it. But he also deserves his flowers for this performance because the Cincinnati defense is not bad, nor is it devoid of talent. In fact, if you're looking at individual pieces, they're probably one of the better individually talented defenses that we have seen this season. Colorado is still probably number one, but Cincinnati, they're not a bad pushover of a defense, and Connor Riley led them with a really, really impressive performance being called from the sidelines. So I was really happy about that, especially given the apprehension of the fan base.
Yeah, this was a for pretty much everybody a prove it game for Connor Riley, and I don't want to necessarily say that he had like a flawless game or anything. It's far from that, but it's definitely pretty far from the abysmal games that we've seen from the past couple weeks. I mean, it felt pretty incredible in the moment. I think with the benefit of sleeping since this game occurred, I think that we can pretty well settle on there were some good moments and some bad moments, but overall, I think it was a net positive game for Connor Riley. Now, I don't think this game was maybe enough to change the overarching narrative about him, but in a vacuum, this was a decent game.
Yeah, it's not going to change anyone's minds because although Cincinnati's defense is individually talented, they're not one of the top defensive units in the conference. If Connor Riley is able to put up, I don't know, like 24 or 28 up against Iowa State this upcoming week, then I think the conversations should start again with, okay, maybe he should stick around and maybe he is just a good offensive play caller who had his hiccups at the worst possible times in the season. But I'm reserving judgment until the end of the season for Connor Riley, especially because it's just been so up and down. But this was also the last home game for a lot of K-State seniors, and the vast majority of them had really good performances, but that's more a game day grades thing. So do you have anything before we move on to that beloved segment?
No, I'm ready to do game day grades for I think the first time in a month. So
I think we speed ran through the Houston grades, but that's my phone. We speed ran through the Houston grades, but yeah, you're right. This is the first time in like a month that we have actually gone through game day grades.
Yeah, which is very telling.
Yeah. But if you're unfamiliar, game day grades, we go through every single position group, including coordinators, giving them a grade from A+ to F. A+ meaning they are near single-handedly won us the game, and F meaning they near single-handedly lost us the game. We won, so there are no F grades this week. And there's no one who would have been close even if we did lose. Though, with how this game went, I have no idea how that would have happened. But we can start off with the man under center in Avery Johnson. At the quarterback position, he went 13 of 23 through the air, 147 yards, 2 touchdowns, and another 72 yards and a touchdown on the ground on 10 attempts. And this is something that's going to be talked about a lot. This is by far the most running quarterback that we have seen from Avery Johnson this entire season, which is both a blessing and a curse, because if there's one thing that it's not because I don't think that he could do it. I just think it's better for younger quarterbacks to try to learn to play from the pocket first and then be an improviser. But that's a coaching philosophy thing, and also a just pick your battles kind of thing. But I was fine with Avery's performance this game. He showed a lot of really, really good, but he's still just not the greatest in structure right now, which is why the QB running game could help him so much. Like, there are a few times that I'm thinking of the go ball to Trey Spivey, where Spivey had a step, which, by the way, we will talk about Spivey because happy, but it, you know, he just throws the ball to the wrong shoulder. He slightly underthrows Jace Brown on perhaps the most disgusting route that I've ever seen from a K-State receiver. But he's just not the best in structure. But when he's allowed to improvise, he is more than capable of making plays, like Trey Spivey's first career touchdown. So I walked away encouraged, but not necessarily ecstatic about Avery Johnson's performance. So I ended up just giving him a B for this game.
I give him B as well. That pretty much sums up how I felt about him. I thought it was a good, not great day for Avery. I liked that we did use him more in the running game, particularly early. I thought that was a good idea. And he had a great day running the ball, 10 carries for 72 yards and the touchdown. I mean, that's really great. And as a passer, I thought that he did what he needed to, and he had a few plays that I thought were pretty effective. Like one of his passes to Trey Spivey, that was a 3rd and 14.
Yep.
He did a really good job extending that play and finding Trey, who was not one of his first reads at all. And he did a good job when I thought he was best extending plays outside the pocket and making things happen there, which goes in line with, he's still struggling within structure. It's getting there. He pretty consistently, I thought, made the right reads, but just wasn't quite putting the ball where it needed to be in those situations. But although granted the Jace drop, which is the main one I'm thinking of, I think that's a shared blame situation because it wasn't the best throw, but Jace should have caught that football. So it's a mixed bag. But all in all, my Avery, it wasn't his best day, but it certainly was far from his worst. So a solid B grade for him.
No, this is very far from the worst that we've seen of Avery Johnson, and I think that this is sort of closest to what we've seen of what Avery Johnson should, quote unquote, in a subjective sense, should be, like, not necessarily the stat line, which is the objective sense, but sort of the play style of improviser who, as he gets older, might improve in structure, but he's just a really good improviser right now. But the next position group, I have hiccups, is the running back room, and we're right back to where we've been in our comfort zone for the running backs for the duration of this show. DJ Giddens ends up going 15 for 143 and 2 touchdowns on the ground, adding 39 additional receiving yards. And then Joe Jackson, stepping in for the injured Dylan Edwards, gets 10 carries, 4.7 yards per carry. So yes, Joe Jackson did out-carry Dylan Edwards in every performance that Dylan has had this year, which in hindsight is a little funny, but this is a really easy A+ for me because, wow. Also, South Carolina women just lost. Anyway.
Really? To who?
Yeah, UCLA.
Oh, that's funny. Anyway, but I give him an A+ too. DJ on 15 carries, average 9.5. This is the most DJ Giddens game of all time, I felt like, where he hit the hole quickly and didn't necessarily sprint, but more so just kind of glided for pretty easy 15-yard gains with regularity. This wasn't like last week against Arizona State where he had 14 for 133, but most of the yards came on 2 carries. This week, it was mostly very consistent, 10+ yard chunks that he was getting his yardage in. So super, super happy with DJ. Joe Jackson, I thought, was really great too. Evan Cantu, he got the first 3 carries of his K-State career, and Devon Rice got the first carry of his career as well. Oh, and something we didn't mention with quarterbacks, Taquan Roberson. He had the first carry of his career as well. 1 carry for 7 yards. But Devon Rice, he was back, returning kicks here and there, along with Bryce Nornberg, true freshman walk-on, the former quarterback, and now a receiver and playing as a true freshman, which is wildly interesting. But yeah. A plus, pretty easy A plus for the running backs. We are hopefully back to normal.
Yeah, because that's sort of been our comfort zone during the duration of this show. Is you can just give the running backs an A, it's fine.
Yeah.
But perhaps the grade that might surprise the most people is the wide receiver room. And the counter argument for the grade that I'm about to give them is, they only had 9 catches. Trey Spivey had 5 for 63 and a touchdown. Dante Cephas had 3 for 22. And Jace Brown had 1 for 15. With receivers this year, it has been mostly evaluating process for me, which is why I was being so generous with them early on in the season, because I was seeing them get open and just not get thrown the ball. And despite me saying all of that, this may have been the most impressed I have been with the receivers this entire season. And a not insignificant part of that is Trey Spivey, who had 2 of the most grown man receptions that we have seen in the past. Honestly, it might be up there with some of the Ben Sinnott grown man receptions, where it's just catch the ball, lower your shoulder, get those extra 3 or 4, both of which that he caught those on were first downs, as well as his improvising touchdown. And Trey Spivey and Jace Brown have perfectly complementary skill sets, where Trey Spivey has that alpha dog X receiver mentality. That means that Jace Brown can go in motion and just route people up like he did on that first drive where he should have caught the touchdown. Jace Brown being very comfortable running his routes, and Dante Cephas contributing as well. So you don't get contributions from people like Keegan Johnson or Jay Jackson. But the process for all of those receivers was so good. I ended up giving them an A. I was massively impressed with this, and it's gotten to the point now I will be very sad if Matthew Middleton takes another job.
I also was happy with the receivers. I didn't give them an A. I gave them a B. The main reason being that I thought that Jace did run a great game, and did have a moment where he was wide open downfield in the first quarter, out of structure, but Avery didn't catch him, unfortunately, and it would have been a huge play. But Jace, he had, I think, 1 drop, maybe 2, when I was generally like that first drop right by the end zone. I mean, that's not an easy catch, but it's something that Jace has got to come down with, I think, as really being the team's number 1 receiver. I was very happy with Trey Spivey. Trey Spivey individually got an A plus today for me, because not only did he have by far the best game of his career, he's having the best stretch of his career these last few games, which brings into question why we didn't see more of him throughout the season, because I was looking at this last night. He had 2 catches in the first game, 2 catches in the second game, and 1 catch in the third game, and then didn't record a catch until last week. So he went through the entire month of October plus 2 weeks on either end of October. So 2 weeks into September and 2 weeks into November. So 2 full months without getting a catch. Then he has 9 catches for over 100 yards, and his first career touchdown in the last couple of weeks. So that I don't know why we weren't playing him more. He did have a bad drop against Arizona State, but beyond that, he's been great. He's been exactly what we were hoping for. And I was just really, really pleased with how he played. And he also blocked really well downfield on his, I think it was DJ on one of his rushing touchdowns. The reason he was able to score was because Trey blocked his guy all the way to the goal line and did not give up. And that
It's
is
like
why
20 yards away from the line of scrimmage.
so Trey was fantastic on run blocking in this game. But otherwise, a solid performance. Keegan Johnson and Jayden Jackson both played, but they were both kind of the second unit, which was interesting. Which Keegan we know was injury, but Jayden otherwise. So a B grade for the receivers, but still some individually really impressive performances, I thought.
Tight ends, fullbacks, this is probably it's not probably, this is the lowest grade that I gave out for this game because, I mean, you got one have a senior day touchdown to Will Swanson, and then I don't want to say a collection of where it was all negative plays, but there wasn't a whole lot of good. So honestly, the C- I gave them might have been being generous because Garrett Oakley, I do want to point out, and this to the people in the Alley Frat group chat, this is specifically meant for you. Arc blocks are hard as hell on a tight end. Like there's a reason why very few running schemes ask for a true arc block from a tight end. Most of the time, they're just walling someone off. No. Garrett Oakley was asked to arc block someone who is smaller and also quicker than he is, which that's not an easy block. It's a block he should theoretically make, but I am sympathetic for him on not making it because he hit the 50-50 and guessed wrong. But still, the tight ends didn't really do anything, and the default grade for me is always going to be C, so I just gave them a C-.
I gave them a C. I gave them the default grade because I thought that run blocking was a bit lacking at times from the tight ends in this game. I do think that there were some unsung good moments. Will Anscow didn't play a lot of snaps in this game, but PFF has him as the second highest graded run blocker for K-State. But it was a limited game for Anscow, only 13 snaps, which is a little surprising given how much we were seeing of him in the middle of the season. But beyond that, the Will Swanson touchdown was a nice touch, and it was a good fourth down play call as well. I remember kind of remarking, like, oh, we're going under center. Because, I mean, in the year 2024, you just don't go under center very much anymore unless you're running triple option or you're Wisconsin.
Or Iowa, I guess.
Or Iowa, yeah.
If you're a Big Ten team.
Yeah, fair enough. But it was a good play call, good play design. It was good to give Will Swanson a touchdown there on senior day, and also help boost our tight end touchdown numbers. But yeah, it was a completely unremarkable day for the tight ends. They didn't really make much of an impact, so they get C.
Now, the offensive line, this is the room that probably saw the most week-to-week improvement, or probably month to this week improvement. And I do credit that with Connor Riley being on the sidelines to sort of give them that coaching, because Cincinnati's defensive line is not bad. They have a second-round pick at nose tackle that was quiet the entire night. They didn't give up a single sack. K-State offensive line didn't give up a single sack. And I noticed that there actually were small adjustments being made in the duration of the game. And it's probably because Connor Riley was more easily able to see it from being on the sidelines and easier being able to communicate it more. The biggest example that I can think of was, I think, in between two of the drives, if I'm remembering this correctly, the splits between Sam Hecht and Taylor Poitier got smaller because they kept trying to bite inside. Like Cincinnati was trying to do what everyone has done for the past few weeks and just started pinching inside to try and cut off any runs. But the K-State offensive line slightly lowered their splits on that side that, was getting pinched on the most. And that really, really helped out. So it's a very small adjustment that was made, probably. And now you could say that Connor Riley should have noticed that from the box. You are correct, but it's still really, really encouraging to see those changes being made after a couple weeks of, I'm just going to call it not great offensive line play, plus keeping Avery clean for the duration of the game. Easy A+ for me.
I gave them an A-. I thought they were pretty good. I do credit some of Avery staying clean to his ability to extend plays, although I do think that since he didn't bring pressure, it was a stone wall for the most part, which was pretty encouraging. And the run blocking was way, way, way better. I was particularly happy, like you, to see us implement some wide zone out of pistol. That is one of my favorite plays to see run, and I'm really happy that we're finally doing that. Again, maybe it's an adjustment that should have been made earlier, but it's an adjustment that has been made at least. But I thought that otherwise they played pretty well. Taylor Portier and Sam Heck's splits getting adjusted was encouraging too. Not as much rotation in this game as we have seen from some others, which I thought was a little interesting. But other than that, not a whole lot else to add, I suppose. Other than I thought that Carver didn't have the best day at tackle and pass block in particular. I thought he actually had some pretty good run blocking moments, though, there where we were kind of pulling him into the inside and having him lead on a few different plays, which I thought was pretty good. And he moves, which we know at this point, he moves very well in space for an offensive lineman. So there's still some good stuff going on. So I gave them an A-.
Yeah, that's fair. Also, forgive the dogs if it is possible to hear them, because I can hear them. But now we can talk about the offensive coordinator in Connor Riley, and it's one of those situations where no matter what I say, there's going to be people that are going to complain at me. So I'm just going to give I don't know why I'm prefacing it like this. I've gone against general consensus multiple times throughout, not even just during this year, but I mean, we were the Will Howard support podcast. I was happy. I was very happy with Connor Riley's performance in this game. The only caveat, and the thing that does worry me, is the duration of the third quarter up until that, like, maybe 4 or 5 minutes left in the third quarter. That was right back to, okay, we're going to try and play a little more conservatively. And again, difference in philosophy, but I think in college football, this is the closest that you can get to having a wrong philosophy of, you get up no matter how big the lead is and you start playing to not lose. Yes, the game is already well in hand. Yes, running the ball is a good idea. But just watching that third quarter where there was a sense of unease with how conservative things were getting, and also how much he seemed, as Connor Riley, I should clarify, went to go back to old habits of preferring more of the inside running game when he put in a lot of the good counter punches in that first half. So other than the third quarter really, really concerning me and the fourth quarter not mattering at all, I'm basically going off of, 3 quarters of a game here. I mean, two of the 3 quarters are really, really good and really encouraging. The third one was really bad. It wasn't even bad in the same way that's like, it could get swept under because, you're leading the game. But I don't, for the same reason that I gave our receivers a high grade, it's about process to me, because process can lead to better things going on in the future if you have the right process. But the first half was so good for Connor Riley. I gave him an A-, and I feel like he deserved every single bit of that. And maybe, I can't make this call definitively yet, like I said, waiting on the Iowa State game, maybe the same adjustment that Clarendon made of coming down onto the sidelines will be really, really helpful for Connor Riley in that same way.
Yeah, I gave him a B. Almost for almost the exact same thing that you were complaining about. In fact, it is the exact same thing. I thought the third quarter was awful, but particularly the first 10 minutes, like you said. I had an identical thought process during the game as you did. I was very happy with how he called the first half. I thought things were really good, even though there were a couple times, which isn't a Riley thing, it's a Kleinman thing, where I was kind of hoping that we would go for it on fourth, but we kicked a field goal instead. I get why we did that, because Klein, for better and for worse, because it just really depends on the occasion, but for better and for worse, he is very loyal, and he puts a lot of trust into the people around him and wants them to succeed. So I think that's why we went with field goals instead of going for it on fourth a few times early in the first half, because he wanted to give the field goal unit a chance to redeem themselves early. But back to Connor Riley, I was very happy to see some of the adjustments that he made in the running game. We've already talked ad nauseum about pistol wide zones, so I won't belabor that.
My beloved.
Other than I just am very happy to see that in our offense. But the passing game was a little bit more crisp at times. Third quarter, though, was rough, very, very rough. But I did like going to Trey Spivey in the end zone late in the first half after that insane Brendan Mott interception. But this was a good, not incredible, but good performance from Connor Riley, and it was one that he just absolutely desperately needed.
Yeah, this may have been the most desperately needed performance that we have seen from a K-State coaching staff member. And people will point to the Texas game in, oh, good Lord, was it 21?
Yeah.
The 21 Texas game. I feel like that's a little bit of revisionist history, because before that point, I think Messingham's job would have been considered begrudgingly safe. But that Texas game was just so abysmal that you couldn't justify it. But I walked away happy with the offensive performance, and even happier with the defensive performance, who, good God, they came to play. They took last week personal, and they were the good unit last week. But starting with the defensive line, I'm not going to waste anyone's time. It's an A+ performance from the defensive line. They ended up getting 4 sacks, Brendan Mott getting a half a sack, Ryan Davis mentioned raw 1.5 sacks, and then Sheedy, I believe, is getting gank of a sack, or maybe it's one. No, they gave him, ESPN gave him the full sack. Pause. But then you just getting that constant pressure, even with taking the sacks out of it, getting the amount of pressure that K-State did on an offense that holds the ball for maybe 1.5 to 2 seconds at a time is monstrously impressive against especially a good interior offensive line in Cincinnati. And outside of garbage time, they weren't able to really get the running game going either. So perhaps the easiest A+ of the season.
Yeah, I gave them an A+ as well. I thought that they were wildly successful in this game. In particular, the first 2 series for the defense were just utterly dominant, and that started up front. And I was really, really happy with how they played from start to finish. Some of the other units, there was some ebb and flow in quality, I thought, but I felt like the defensive line really never had that problem, and was thoroughly impressive for the duration of the game. I was really happy to see the pressure stay going late, because we got a lot of pressure but didn't actually get a lot of sacks until pretty late in the game. Like three of K-State's 4 sacks in this game came in like the final 7 minutes, I think, and on the last 2 drives for Cincinnati, which that's not a bad thing or a criticism. That's just that's just saying that. But it's good to. I'm glad that we got a lot of defensive ends involved with getting to the quarterback. Toby, I thought, was really great in particular in this game. Brian Davis, really happy to see him register a few more sacks as well. That class with Cheedy, Ryan Davis, and Jordan Allen, I think is going to end up going down as one of the better ones that K-State's ever had for defensive ends. Jordan Allen was doing a fairly decent job when he was playing kind of late in the game. But yeah, this is an A+, and it's not close for the defensive line.
No, it's not remotely close. The linebackers, I feel like they could have a little bit more push and pull with their grade. I am remarkably pleased with their game. However, there are just a few too many missed tackles in my mind. Granted, 3 of those belong to Rex Van Wy, who did play perhaps more than, because we sort of threw out the wild card pick of Rex Van Wy on the preview episode just because he's the schematic answer to this defense, and he did play more than I guess I expected to, but he played fine. He missed like 3 or 4 tackles, but he did his job outside of those times. But Austin Romaine and Austin Moore were both excellent as per usual. Des Purnell played with perhaps the most Des Purnell attitude that I have seen in a while, which is to say that just the Desmanian devil was on the loose. So I gave the linebackers an A because it's mostly, unfortunately, on a few missed tackles on things like screen passes, and plus the lack of general splash plays from Romaine and Moore. Romaine and Moore both just did their jobs really, really well, but didn't splash. Des had a few splash plays, but I just ended up giving them an A.
I feel pretty differently about the linebackers, honestly, in this game. This was, I think, other than the tight ends, probably the most disappointing unit of the day. And I think that's because I think I hyperfixated on the missed tackles a lot more than you did. Because there were a few occasions where it was not just a missed tackle, but a genuinely bad missed tackle. On a check down at one point, it was either Austin Moore or Rex Van Wy, I can't remember. And they all they needed to do was push him out of bounds because it was right on the sideline, and they just didn't even make contact.
Oh, that was Rex.
Yeah, that was Rex, and that ended up going from what would have been like about a 2 or 3 yard gain to I think 15 or something like that, and that wasn't very good. Austin Moore got ran a few times, which is no fault of his own, but like he just got to work the angles a little better than that. I give him a C+. Honestly, I thought that Romaine was fine. Des was fine, but Austin Moore and Rex Van Wy I thought were kind of rough in this game. And another thing I think that's starting to worry me as well about the linebackers is that even once we got to garbage time, we didn't really see any of the backups. We only saw the Austins, Rex, and Dez the entire game, as far as I can remember, or at the very least for most of the game. So that leaves me very concerned, which it has been a concern already for the lack of depth that we have at that position. But the fact that even once we got to like 41-9, we weren't really seeing anybody else, that's very concerning.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to look at the participation for the numbers because I think you're right.
I saw Zach Wittenberg at one point.
Okay, well, now your complaints are just completely wiped
I was gonna
out.
say all of a sudden. Oh, we also saw Tyson Struber and Cam Salas,
Oh my
which
gosh, Strubot's still on the team?
he is. He's a linebacker now.
I remember when he was a receiver and then a safety.
Yeah, it's been interesting.
But yeah, I am concerned with the linebacker depth just because it's there's not much there. And I think that this has sort of been the weird story for the past few years where we come in, it's like, oh, like the linebacker depth is really good. And then for no reason, like three people get injured, and we're like, wow, there's no one left in the linebacker room, which isn't really Stannard's fault. It's just really bad luck.
Yeah, it seems like every team every year is always going to have like one room that just gets decimated by injury, and unfortunately for K-State, the last like 4 seasons, it has been the linebackers. So, which at some point maybe it's a pattern, which is not good. But I don't think it is. I really do think it's just kind of tough luck because a lot of them have been just kind of freak injuries, like Asa getting hurt on like the opening kickoff of a game. That's not a linebacker duty. That's him running in a straight line and like tearing his ACL or something. I don't know what actually happened to him, but
And then someone decides to take their mission preseason, and then someone else gets into a car crash.
yeah. So there's been some pretty freak of nature incidents for this linebacker room, unfortunately.
Yeah. But outside the linebackers, I hate to dogpile on the defensive backs again, especially when they only gave up 200 passing yards. But again, it's about process. It could have been way worse. If Brendan Sorsby didn't lock onto his first read, which I think that the collapse of Brendan Sorsby should kind of be studied because it is fascinating how he went from being so good at the beginning of the year to just being really bad in the back end. But there are a few times, and I'm not thinking of a couple of the deep balls that were thrown that were just slightly off. A lot of those, weirdly enough, had solid coverage on them. But like I said, it's about process, and there were a lot of dudes that were getting open deep that just were not getting hit. And some of this could go back to Klanderman, who I really, really liked Klanderman's performance. In fact, there's only one complaint that I have his performance, and it's something I'm not going to say it's minor, but it's not really anything he can do something about this late in the season. But the defensive backs, despite only giving up 200 yards, there is a world where they give up about 350 if Brendan Sorsby keeps his eyes downfield and just sticks in there and makes the throw. The counter argument to this is they were playing complementary football, as in the K-State defense, because they were getting so much pressure and forcing Brendan Sorsby to look downfield, which is not what the offense is designated to do. So on one, 6 in one hand, half dozen of the other, I gave them a B.
I gave them a B minus. Pretty similar reasons. I will say I thought Jacob Parrish was actually really fantastic.
Oh yeah, Parrish was amazing this game.
Yeah, Parrish. I was very, very happy with how he played. He was getting. He was not just really sticking coverage generally, but he was getting a lot of pass breakups as well, which I think he had 3.
He did. He had 3
in this game, which it just feels like a ton because K-State doesn't really get a lot of pass breakups, honestly. At least in my lifetime, we never really have, just by virtue of how Bill Snyder defenses worked and how Klanderman defenses have worked. Pass breakups have not always been like the primary focus, but 3 for Jacob Parrish and 1 for Zayshawn Rich. And this one, Wesley Fair had a little streak of plays at the end near the end of the game where he had some good moments, had some not as good moments, and beyond that, it was definitely a mixed bag. for the defensive backs. I had some similar complaints to you. Colby McAllister, I thought was actually really great in this game, but I believe he got hurt and had to leave. I don't remember if he came back.
He didn't.
So that is something to keep an eye on because Colby McAllister had usurped Jordan Riley, and so a little concerning to see him leave because Jordan Riley did just about give up a late garbage time touchdown because he was late to break on man coverage. Shocking development there. And then I believe the next play we gave up a touchdown again because this was garbage time, so it wasn't really that important. But Siegel, when the ball was in the air, he was already turning around to like yell at the defensive backs who were in the game for not communicating.
Also known as Deshaun Rich. That was Deshaun Rich's zone in that. I think it was quarters. It was either quarters or quarter, half, because that was Deshaun Rich's zone.
Yeah, and so Siegel will let him hear it, which it's a teachable moment for the true freshman, unfortunately. But a B minus for the DBs. Definitely could have been a lot worse. Then they definitely had their bright spots. Keenan Garber, there were some completions on him. Some of them were actually just kind of tough luck because he actually has some pretty decent coverage at times in this game. Just some really tough catches were being made against him.
Which tight end who's like 6'5", 250. That's not a winning matchup.
Which is a shame for Keenan, particularly with how rough things have been for him throughout most of the year. I was hoping him playing great coverage would get rewarded, and the exact opposite happened. So he played great coverage, and things got even worse. So, which is a real shame.
Yeah, that happens to a lot of defensive backs.
That is the life of a corner. He should have been a receiver. He should have stuck at receiver, done that to corners. So
he had to be a team player about it.
It's a real shame, man.
Klanderman, I keep going back and forth on this because on one hand, I'm really annoyed with it comes down to coverage rules. I'm really annoyed how one of the coverage rules work in his zone coverages, which are really just match coverages. I'm really annoyed with how one of those rules works, but at the same time, he's not going to change it this late in the season, and it was a really good defensive performance. So I will give him an A+, but still voice my concern about the match coverage rule, and it has to do with that short motion where the wide receiver is on the off line of scrimmage and then motions behind them. I don't like that the match trade-off there is always the safety. I don't like that rule. I think it's a dumb rule, and I think it's very easy to exploit, but there's not really anything he can do about it right now. So it sucks, but they also didn't score more than 3 points outside of garbage time. So whatever, A+.
I gave him an A- because despite I thought the linebackers being not fantastic and the defensive backs being inconsistent, I still think his game plan overall was actually pretty good because I think because you mentioned some stuff with the defensive backs about it being a little late to make adjustments on some of the things that they're doing. And I think maybe Claremont has partially accepted that. And that may very well be why pressure has become such. Even pressure is already very important for Claremont defenses, but even more so right now when the defensive backs have not been what we expected them to be outside of Jacob Parrish and Marquise Sewell. And VJ is kind of in between there, I think. But the pressure was really effective, and I think for better or for worse, covered up a lot of the shortcomings in other areas. So being a defensive coordinator, a big part of it is being lucky and being able to use your greatest strength to hide your greatest weakness, and he did that pretty well this week. So he gets an A-.
So that's game day grades and one of the most desperately needed good performances in quite some time. Now we can move into offensive and defensive MVPs before we get into takeaways. Offensive, I don't even think there's really any debate for either of them. I think offensive is DJ Giddens, and then defensive is Brendan Mott.
Yeah, I think offense, I absolutely agree. There's just zero debate at all, unless you want to throw Spidey in. But DJ was just too good, and having 2 touchdowns, I think, it just separates him. Defense, I think you could make an argument for Jacob Parrish, but Mott was pretty unblockable for a lot of the night. It just didn't register as much on the stat sheet, unfortunately for him. So I think he's probably going to come up just a little bit short of the K-State single season sack record, which is a shame.
Many such cases.
Yeah. But the fact that he even was kind of contending for it is extremely impressive, and a hat tip as well for the development of Brendan Mott, for both. And that's a hat tip to both Brandon and to Buddy Wyatt as well, for getting Brendan to come back and end up having a fantastic year. But yeah, I'm fine with that. DJ and Brendan.
So shout out Brendan Mott for recording the lone interception on day.
Yeah, we did kind of gloss over that, I guess. Maybe we should take a moment to talk about just that.
Happy sauce.
Yeah, that was absolutely hilarious. But I love a defensive lineman pick. They're so rare, so you need to savor them when they come by. And I'm hoping it balances out the fact that we did throw one of those earlier in the season, but yeah, that was absolutely hilarious and really set us up to kind of blow the game open right before halftime, which was fantastic. It also led to Trace Spivey getting his first career touchdown. So lots of good came from that.
Hero of the day, Brendan Mott. In terms of more general takeaways, I feel legally obligated to explain that, yes, K-State can indeed still make it to Arlington, but you're getting to here's how Bernie Sanders can still win the presidency territory whenever you're talking about it. K-State has to win up against Iowa State, obviously. 2 of the 3 of the combination of Arizona State, BYU, and Colorado have to lose, which Colorado is playing Oklahoma State, Lamau. Arizona State is playing Arizona, Lamau, but also a rivalry game, so I guess. And then BYU is playing Houston, so Lamau. That's not happening. And I also think that Tech has to lose. And
That's Baylor.
Baylor has to lose. Okay.
They have KU at home, so that might actually happen.
Yeah,
but Baylor's also on a 6-game win streak.
Yeah.
Baylor honestly is kind of just super KU in terms of how their season has gone. They just like turned around their bad luck way faster.
Yeah. And we were talking about this last night. You could argue it should have been 7 in a row because they should have beat Colorado.
Yes, they absolutely should have.
But yes, it is still possible for K-State to make it to Arlington. They won't, but it's possible. But the rest of the season is about development now. Development and praying to God that you do not go to the Liberty Bowl, because we will not be doing a preview episode if we go to the Liberty Bowl. We will say that we were one of the only above 500 teams that did not get a bowl invite.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about how long has it been that like 6 wins was the benchmark for bowl eligibility, because I know that I think up until the 90s, you weren't really guaranteed a bowl spot if you didn't get at least 9 wins. Because I don't know. I'm curious about the history of the bowls like that. I'm sure that somebody else listening to this knows the answer.
Probably Lucas.
Lucas probably would. Scott Wildcat probably would. But beyond that, I am in agreement. While I do kind of have vague desires to travel to a bowl game, if it is the Liberty Bowl, I will not be doing that. I've been once, and there were a bunch of Arkansas feral hog people there, and I didn't like it very much, and so I'm not going to go back. I will consider going back when they renovate the stadium, because the stadium is just garbage.
The stadium's awful. But the rest of the season is about development, and the development for the young guns has been encouraging. I do worry looking forward to the next season, which, yes, we still have to play Iowa State. but Farmageddon is a game that's perennially on crack. So I do not know what is going to happen in Farmageddon. I am concerned with the defense, just because they'll need to pick up a few pieces in the transfer portal or really have a few guys step up, because next season kind of has to be one of those seasons.
Yeah, I'm with you. We do really need, I think, particularly on the back end of the defense, I think is where we need some pickups in the portal. I am marginally encouraged by the play of Wesley Fair. I'm hoping that Jack Fabris can take the classic 1 year after being lauded by the coaches as like being really good, then he's actually ready a year later leap, because we have seen that several times in the past with the coach saying a guy has been really great, then he actually isn't that great for a year, but then next year he's actually really good. So I'm hoping we see that from Jack Fabris, but TBD on that. But yeah, on Farmageddon and the general wackiness of that game, it really comes down to what the college football deities are going to think is wackier. K-State winning in Ames to keep Iowa State at 9 wins, or Iowa State winning and getting to the Big 12 championship just to get like smacked around by somebody. Like what are they picking as the pain for Iowa State, I suppose?
I will say that I think Arizona State is a worse matchup for Iowa State than Colorado.
I think I might agree with that. I don't know. I'd want to sit down and actually think about it, because I've not thought about it until this exact second. So I might be posted in the comments for that. But I don't know. Regardless, I am really excited for Farmageddon. It is yet another night game. I was going through the schedule last night because I was just wondering, like how many like non like 6 p.m. or later games have we had this year. Going back through the schedule, our only 11 a.m. kicks were Tulane and Oklahoma State. Then we had 2:30 was Houston. That's it. Right? Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Then every single other game that we've had on our schedule has been 6 p.m. Central Standard Time or later.
I think a lot of that has to do with, and this isn't a bit, a lot of people say this is a bit. I'm not saying it as a bit. K-State has been, a pretty big draw for the vast majority of the season, mostly off of the back of Avery Johnson's erratic but still really fun to watch style of play.
Yeah, I kind of agree, actually, and I'm really hoping that next year we can take a better advantage of that, and play a bit more consistently throughout the whole year, because next year does need to be the year. I think that there was a window where we thought that this year could actually be the year and we could like skip a step, and I think that was a little bit premature. But regardless, winning cures all. Those are the words that are ringing through my head after this game, because it's been a very rough month, but a resounding victory against a okay Cincinnati team. Winning makes everything better. And 8-3, it just sounds much better to say than 7-4, because 8-3 you think bright future and potential, and 7-4 you think Bill Snyder going to the Cactus Bowl in the late season. You can watch Alex Delton run for like 110 yards on like 200 carries or something and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to Farmageddon, and also pray for TCU, because there is no force on earth that is more unstoppable than Scott Satterfield looking for that sixth win for bowl eligibility.
And if nothing else, that man is good for college football in carrying the banner for the value of bowl games, because nobody wants to get to one but more badly than Scott Satterfield does. So
I'm pretty sure that if Cinci played Oregon this next weekend, they'd probably win, just because Satterfield will not be denied his damn bowl game.
if nothing else, the man is consistent, and you have to give him a little credit for that. Consistently mediocre is a whole different animal, but absent context, consistency is at least decent.
You have any final notes before we put this game to rest and then start having nightmares about whatever the hell is going to happen at Farmageddon?
I don't know. Go eat some turkey this week and be thankful about stuff.
I agree. Thank you all for listening to this episode of the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. If you want to follow or contact the show, you can follow us just about anywhere at Aggieville Alleycats. And if you want to email us, we're AggievilleAlleycats@gmail.com. If you want to follow us on a more personal note, I am at ACEdward00.
I am at Connor Baltzor, capital C, capital B.
And if you want to support the show financially, please be sure to check out the official Aggieville Alleycats merch store and the supporters link, which will be gone in like 2 weeks. But most importantly, thank you all for listening to this episode of the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. Or come rain, shine, or anything in between, we're delivered to you the Kansas State sporting news you so love. Stay safe, Alleycats.